Welcome to the PHNX Wildcats Show. Shout out to OG's Brands, the official sponsor of Flavoring Friday. Head on over to OG's Brands to see their full lineup, including the two newest gummies, the OG's Naturals and the Big OG's, and to find out where you can purchase. Now, joined by the GOAT, Mr. Brian Jeffries. Brian, you still have an immaculate jersey behind you. I like it.
I just need a bag of gummies here, and my day would be made. So.
Let's be honest here. We also need to give a big shout out to somebody that I was very happy about today. Bill, you know anybody that has a birthday today?
Yeah, I think Brody Dryden has a birthday today, and I hope he's enjoying it well, because everyone should have a happy birthday, right?
Everybody should. And have you been working on him getting to Vegas? I was messaging him about quite a bit last night about this.
Well, I know he burned some vacation time going to Disneyland, of all places, so we'll see what we can do.
All right. Yes, that would be awesome. All right. Brian, I don't know if you noticed or not, but March is here now, which means March Madness for Mr. Brian Jeffries. First and foremost, this team is really kind of hitting its stride right now. And let's talk about that ASU game. Kylan Boswell, that just looked like, I mean, you see what this team is capable when he is fully, when he's playing that way. And Brian, that was just a breath of fresh air seeing that young man play the way that he's capable of playing.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, being around Kylan, I can tell you that he probably works harder than anybody on that team, and it's a hard-working team, but he's a guy that's in the gym every time he gets a chance. He's always wanting to improve, and keep in mind he's still 18 years old, and he's got not quite 2 seasons behind him, and last year really came off the bench. Now, being a starter, I think that he's had some ups and downs. There's no question about that, but I love the kid and his approach to the game. It never wavers. And so, yeah, having him, he doesn't have to score 17 every night, but that was certainly a big boost for the Wildcats. And if he plays well, the team plays well, but you could say that really about the 8 guys that Tommy has in his rotation. If everybody they don't have to have great nights every night, but if they go out and score their average, rebound their average, then guess what? They're going to win games.
Yeah, and Jaden Bradley, we got to give him a little bit of love too. I mean, that's a heck of a little point guard duo when they're playing. You got with being able to have somebody like Kylan with Jaden Bradley coming off the bench. They're calling it Bradwell when you combine both of them. Do you get it, Brian? It's funny.
I got it. Jaden has been a tremendous help. The guy takes extremely good care of the ball. He's very smart. He's an excellent defender. I think he should shoot the ball more, to be quite frank with you. I think sometimes that he, wants to get his teammates involved maybe too much because, he's not a bad offensive player at all. And I think when, as his confidence grows, and that's one thing we've probably seen from him in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think that he's looking for his shot a little bit more. He's driving to the bucket more. And I think that's going to help him because when you play other teams, of course, they're going to scout you, and having Jaden be able to do what he's been doing lately, I think it puts the other teams then in a position where they've got to guard him, where maybe halfway through the season they thought, okay, well, this guy's not an offensive threat, so we don't have to put our best defender on him. Well, that's changed now, and that just makes Arizona a better team.
Brian, have you ever seen anybody quite like Caleb Love at the University of Arizona? Somebody that just plays with that kind of passion, but he can be 20 of 20. He can be 0 of 20, but guess what? That next shot is going in. He's a remarkable player to watch.
Well, he's got the swagger, and yes. I think every team needs somebody with swagger because that kind of bleeds over to the rest of the roster, and that's the way he is. He approaches every game. You kind of see that same look on his face that if you need me, I'm going to take over this game. I thought it was very interesting. The 2 games against Arizona State this year were not his 2 highest scoring games by any means, but his efficiency was exceptional in those 2 games. And I think you see that from him where he knows. I think Caleb has a great sense. And again, here's a guy that's, played plenty of basketball over the years, over 2,000 points. I think he gets the sense of when he knows he needs to score more and when he knows that, he can help out his teammates. And so I admire that about him. And, I think he wants to make the most of this. You look at the 4 seniors. This is it. This is their opportunity now to make a name for this team, for themselves, and put themselves in the record books. And you sense that. I can think about any senior when you get down that home stretch. I think these 4 guys in particular, because of the amount of basketball that they have behind them, they're all transfers. 2 of them just in for this season, and 2 have been here for a couple of years. But they want to make the most of this, and that's why I think they've elevated their game, and Caleb's a perfect example.
I look at this year's team, Brian, and I think that this year's team is, and again, last year's team I thought overachieved during the regular season. It was a very good team, obviously, but it didn't quite have I think some of the alphas that maybe this year's team does. I think that this team is a little bit more positioned come March to be able to make a deep run, just because you've got some more pieces. You've got some players that have been there, and there's a little bit of a toughness factor that I think was as a real nice addition as opposed to maybe last year. I'm not saying last year's team wasn't tough, but there's a little bit more of an oomph to this team.
Yeah, you could say that, Mike. Let's trade last year for this year. Okay.
Right.
So let's trade Kirk Risa for Kylan Boswell. All right. So same, basically their scoring's almost identical. Risa more assists, Kylan a lot fewer turnovers.
Right.
So there you go. Let's see. Let's trade Courtney Love for Ramsey. Ramsey for Love. Okay, you've got twice as many points now. I think that was a definite upgrade right there.
Right.
Tabellis for Keyshawn Johnson. All right, now you don't have the offense, but I'll go back to the factor you just mentioned there: toughness, better defender in Keyshawn Johnson. So I would say an upgrade there. Of course, you've got Pella Larson, Umar Ballo. They're back from a year ago. Let's see, Sed Henderson for who do we trade? KJ Lewis.
KJ Lewis.
How about that?
Yeah.
All right. So you've got a younger guy in KJ, but a more athletic guy in KJ. I think, his future is exceptionally bright. And, he played an outstanding game at Arizona State. A lot of the things that KJ does not show up in the box score.
Right.
And that's the thing that is of his value. And then let's see, Adama Ball for Jaden Bradley. Well, I don't think there's any question there. We've already covered that.
Right.
So,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the comparison, and it's a different team. Every team's different year in and year out. But these guys, I think maybe have the right pieces in the right places. But a lot of it, Mike, let's be totally honest. A lot of it goes back to matchups. When you get into the NCAA tournament, last year, bad matchup for Arizona and Princeton. Okay. Let's see, what was their loss before that? Houston, bad matchup. Okay.
TCU was a tough matchup before that even. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you go back and, there's been teams that they probably should have beaten that they didn't, but then they've beaten some teams that maybe you say, wow, how did they get that done? So that's why they call it madness, because you get into March, you get into that NCAA tournament. And I mean, you've got to be hitting on all cylinders, and you better hope that the matchup is in your favor.
And what I like too, and we saw it against Washington, when Keyshawn Johnson comes out and plays like that with that kind of electricity, where he's blocking shots, where he's rebounding, it changes the equation entirely, Brian, because he's somebody that really there isn't somebody else like him on the roster, especially when he's playing like that.
Well, and I think the fact that he's listed at 6'7", but he's got a tremendous wingspan, and that's why he's such a good defender, is that he can guard guys taller than him. I talked to him the day of the ASU game here on Wednesday, and I asked him about that. And he didn't go into too much depth, but I think he knows that that's what makes him special, his ability to guard pretty much anybody, and he's been asked sometimes to guard almost anybody on the court. And this week's going to be a good example. He's going to end up maybe against some 7-footers when Oregon comes to town, but he's willing to do that, and I think he's got the skill set to do it. And so, like I said, if you follow my formula there of trading Tabellis for Johnson, you've got a much better defender in Keyshawn, and he's got that energy. Tabellis, and love the kid, and he was kind of cerebral the way he played. I mean, he was didn't change his expression a lot, but Keyshawn, when he's got that energy going, you can feel it on the court.
Are we giving Umar Ballo maybe not quite enough credit? Because it's funny, like every single game, Brian, it seems 17-13, 14-12. I mean, the double-doubles that he gets are big-time double-doubles. It's not like they're these 10-10 or, 11-10 type things. I mean, in Arizona basketball history, there haven't been a lot of guys that you can essentially pencil in and it's going to be 16-13 every single game.
Well, it's extremely difficult. I asked Tommy about that last week, and he said, college basketball, it's tough to average a double-double. It really is. And are there only 4, I believe, now in at least major college basketball right now, maybe Power 5 schools, only 4 guys that are averaging a double-double right now. That tells you a lot about where Umar is. And a lot of things, if not everything, goes through him. And if he plays that, so you go back to what you just mentioned. So if Keshad has that energy and Umar's, doing what he's doing, and, Kylan gets to double figures in scoring, we know what Caleb Love can do. We can know what Pella Larson can do. And if that bench plays as well as it has been through most of the season, then, Arizona's a really tough out. And, I'm excited to see what happens here in the next month.
All right, Brian, when are you getting up to Las Vegas? Because we have a rendezvous. I was talking with Ben White about this. We will be hanging out, Brian Jeffries. You're not getting out of this.
All right. I believe we're going on Tuesday.
Okay.
So, they tell me the day before we leave. I have my bags always packed just in case, there's a change.
And Brian, are you backing the A right now? Because there's a big A right behind you. I just noticed that. Brian Jeffries is currently backing the A.
Yeah. Well, that's, when you're at home, you want to be surrounded by, familiar things. And that's my inspiration when I walk into the quote unquote home office.
All right. Well, I like it. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Tommy Lloyd, watching him. What I like about watching Tommy Lloyd is Tommy Lloyd looks like he's enjoying his job. I think like a lot of times you'll see coaches that just don't look like they're having a good time. I watched Tommy Lloyd before the game. He's talking with the officials. Like, it's almost like he's like asking them, how are the kids doing, whatnot. And again, he gets on the officials, but I just love watching him because it looks like he's actually, like I said, it looks like he's enjoying himself. I think that's kind of a lost art, especially with a guy that has been as wildly successful as he's been.
Well, I mean, here's a guy that a lot of us, I would say not enough people probably get to do what they really love to do. Right. If you have a passion for something and you pursue it, not everyone gets to that point in their career. He has. I mean, this is his passion, is to be a college basketball coach. Right. He could have left Gonzaga a long time ago, and he didn't because it was a good thing. And, he liked where he was at, and he loves where he's at in Tucson because he knows what he can achieve here. Right. He knew what they were achieving at Gonzaga. He knows that there is no limit to what you can achieve when you're coaching the University of Arizona basketball team. And so, yeah, why wouldn't you love it? And that's kind of his lifestyle too. I mean, he's a guy that just enjoys the simple things in life. He grew up in a small town in Washington, and his mom and dad. I love his mom and dad. They come to a lot of the games. They'll come down and spend some time. And they were here last week. They went up to Tempe. And you can see, where Tommy's personality comes from and where I think his demeanor comes from is just hanging around his dad because his dad's kind of a fun guy. And I think last week his dad was showing me pictures on his phone of the weather in Kelso, and it wasn't good. And so he was just happy to be in Tucson. That's the way that family is. And that's why, Tommy's doing what he's doing.
All right, let's say you're not like Brian Jeffries and you don't have front row seats, but you're thinking to yourself, I'd like to go to the game and get seats maybe by the GOAT. Game Time is here for you. Game Time. Check it out. You can get basketball tickets. You can get concert tickets. You name it, Game Time has it. All right, here's all you got to do. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. All kinds of good stuff. If you're an engineer out there looking for some work, maybe, and you want to hang out with Brian Jeffries, might be the time. Go check out go check it out. And then the AZ Lotto. Brian Jeffries, have you ever won the Arizona lottery? Don't be modest. If you have, be honest.
Yeah, I've won $2 before.
Right.
I think wait a minute. I believe I still have I got a scratcher in my stocking for Christmas, and I won $2.
All right. Is that the most you've won? It feels like you've won more than that, Brian. You strike me as a lucky person.
I think I won 6 one time.
All right. Well, either way, Brian, again, but just like Brian Jeffries, the Arizona Lottery is not just about playing games and winning prizes. It's about being out in the community. Visit azadventures.com for more information on how you can take an adventure for a chance to win $1 million in cash and Arizona travel prizes. All right. I had multiple people that have asked about what your thoughts on Mount Crevis are, Mo Crevis to the untrained eye. What he's fun to watch, obviously, and you can tell he's going to get better. His best basketball is ahead of him. Watching Mo Crevis, though, this feels like the kind of player that you would always see at Gonzaga that works his way through, and then by like the time he's like late sophomore year, early junior year, you're like, oh gosh, this guy's averaging 14 and 10. It feels he's got a little bit of that Gonzaga feel to it, and that's a good thing, Brian Jeffries.
Well, he's tremendous footwork, very smart young man, and he's going to be really good. You can look at next year's team right now and say he's the starting center.
Right.
I think it's a critical off season for Mo. So whatever happens here for the final month of this season, he's been a big help off the bench. He gives Umar minutes to rest, and the great thing about Krivas is he's contributing on top of that. Right. He's not just taking up space. I think this is a huge off season for him. Get in the weight room with Chris Rounds, whatever his plans are this summer. I think he can make himself into a all-conference center come next year. And let's be honest. I mean, they're going to need him to make a pretty decent jump. And most guys do. Freshman to sophomore year, that's usually when you make your most improvement. And I think he has that capability of doing that. And he could be one of the best, not only in the Big 12 next year, but he could be one of the best big men in the country next year.
Are you excited about the Big 12, Brian? You're going to be going to a lot of rowdy fan bases.
Yeah, I am, Mike. And that's, along with the competition, which is going to be incredibly difficult. I mean, it's the best basketball conference in the country, and it's only going to get better next year. I mean, you trade Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma's just a 500 program, and Texas has had its moments. But then you add, Arizona, you add Colorado, right. Utah. I mean, ASU's going, so we have to add them. Yeah, and then you look at what they have now.
Right.
And, BYU just beat Kansas in Lawrence, and that conference is just incredible. And so I'm looking forward to the competition because it's going to be tough every night. But you mentioned the thing that I personally will enjoy the most, and that's the environment.
Yes.
And that when we go on the road next year, and I don't care where it is, I think I looked at the Big 12 attendance figures. And I think with the exception of Central Florida and maybe Cincinnati, I mean, everybody else is putting, 85, 90% capacity into their buildings. And then you look around the Pac-12 right now, and that's not the case. And,
what do you think?
There's just outside Arizona.
Yeah. Let me ask you that, Brian. That's it's funny. It's almost like Brian. It's almost like Brian's smarter than me because he already he is, but he already knows where I'm going with something before I even mention it. Brian, I was going to ask you that. What happened to the Pac-12? Because I remember coming up in the 90s, Maples was kind of like Cameron West in that it was an insane environment where you could literally feel the gym shaking just by watching TV. Even back in the day, Pauley, for when Arizona got there would be, a raucous environment. What happened to that? Because it just feels like Arizona is obviously there, but it feels like we lost so much. And I have no clue what happened, to be honest with you.
Well, I don't either, Mike. I mean, you could look at a lot of things, and in no particular order, it probably starts with coaching. And, right. If you got to have the right guy in the right place to do it. Let's talk about environment. What's one of the reasons? I mean, Arizona's had outstanding coaches. Okay, that's number one. But when you bring a recruit in to McHale Center on a visit,
right?
I mean, does that not have an influence?
Right.
As opposed to going to a game in Stanford or Berkeley or, you name it, really.
Right.
Here's a great example, Washington State. Outstanding coach in Kyle Smith.
Yep.
They average 3,000 people a game. So he's overcome that.
Right.
Because you have a great coach in that spot, but every school can't say that. So like I said, I don't have an answer for that, but I think it starts with coaching. Number two, you got to have the players, you got to have the talent. But there's somewhere in there is environment. And right. That is it a place that, players want to go play? Players want to play at Arizona. They want to play at Kansas. They want to play at Baylor. They want to play at Houston because of the success of the programs. And when they go there, they understand that. They see it's coaching. It's the other talent that surrounds you. It's the fan base. It's everything. There's a lot of things that go into it for these guys. And somewhere down the line, Mike, the Pac-12 is just fallen behind. And like I said, I'm not going to say it's one particular thing because I don't know what it is. If that's it, I think it's a list of things that, unfortunately, it's all kind of fallen together here over the last how many years? 10 years now,
right? Since
really the conference was where you could look top to bottom, and when you go on the road, you say, and it's been difficult. What's the crazy thing is now we talk about the weak league, but it's been tough to win on the road in this
Right.
conference this year. So there's still something out there, but it just hasn't clicked. And so as sad as I am, and I think a lot of us are, to see the Pac-12 end here very shortly, at the same time, it's going to be a great upgrade to get to the Big 12.
Is it going to feel a little bit full circle when you're calling a game with Houston with Kelvin Sampson, or also from your neck of the woods at Washington State originally, Brian Jeffries?
Yeah, I mean, he's had an interesting career, and if you can win at Washington State, you're doing so. You look at what Kyle Smith, Tony Bennett, Kelvin Sampson. You look at the guys that have been successful there. Unfortunately for Cougar fans, they haven't stayed, and
right.
And I hope for Washington State's sake that they can keep Kyle Smith, but he's going to be a hot commodity now because of what he's been able to do up there. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to see some different guys, some different places. And, like I said, I would have rather just kept the Pac-12 together and moved on, and it's not going to happen. So we'll enjoy the next step.
Well, that also means, though, that the rest of the nation gets to see more Brian Jeffries, though. You're going to be hopscotching around, a lot more travel, Brian Jeffries, for you.
Well, we've been sitting around with the calculator trying to figure that out. I don't think it's as great as people realize. It's just going to be different.
Right.
And so you don't have traveling parties in the Pac-12, traveling partners. And so you don't go now, like next weekend, Arizona goes and plays the LA schools Thursday and Saturday. That's not going to happen. Now you're going to play Houston on Tuesday and come home and play Cincinnati on Saturday.
Right.
And it's going to work that way. My understanding is, and they haven't done the schedule yet, my understanding is that if they have you scheduled to play at Central Florida or West Virginia, they might make that a 2-game trip for a team like Arizona or any of the teams in the West.
Right.
They might make an exception there, again, just to try and cut down on travel, because if you had to make that trip from Tucson to Central Florida and then go back to West Virginia later in the season, now you're talking some long flights. My impression is, and I don't know this officially, I've just heard there's talk that they're going to try and work things so you don't have teams flying cross country multiple times during the season.
Brian, have you ever been to Illegal Pete's?
Yes. Yeah. Sat upstairs on the.
Oh, nice. Sat upstairs. Yeah. And Brian, what are you, 6'4" or 6'5"?
Depends if I stand up straight.
All right. Well, if you're standing up straight, how tall are you?
6'4.5".
All right. Well, that means that you are Brian Jeffries in the second row, peering down on the entire city, and Brody is only 6'8", correct?
That depends if it's official or not. Yes.
Okay. Well, either way, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for everybody. I know that Brody's been to Illegal Pete's. All right. The college basketball season is in crunch time. Win or lose, Illegal Pete's is here to bring you a win with your legendary sound check deal. Oh, interesting. Bring in your ticket stub from any ticketed event, maybe a U of A game, and get a draft beer or a house margarita for a penny. Illegal Pete's wants to celebrate with you, whether it's a pregame or a postgame, with locations in Tucson and Tempe, Arizona. They got you covered for all your game day needs. Must purchase an adult entree to redeem Illegal Pete's sound check deal. Illegal Pete's, your go-to spot for burritos, buddies, and beer. And you might even see Brian Jeffries there. Also, Brian,
is that like any ticket stub?
Let's see here. Sound check deal. Bring in your ticket stuff from any ticketed event. Yes, Brian, you would qualify, Brian. Ooh, Brian, I'm telling you, we are getting you free food on air right here.
Okay.
I don't know if they have food or not, but yeah, we got this. Yes, that will work. And have you been to the Phoenix Raceway, Brian Jeffries? You strike me as a guy. Can you even fit into a race car?
That's on probably not. That's on my bucket list.
Yeah, all right. Well, I can fit into a race car. I do not have the same vertical challenges that Brian Jeffries does. But either way, check it out. Phoenix Raceway, all kinds of good stuff going on there. Get your tickets to the Shriners Children's 500 at Phoenix Raceway. March 8th to 10th promises a weekend of good vibes for the whole family. Get your reserved grandstand tickets now at phoenixraceway.com. All right, Arizona's got 3 more games left, Brian. You got obviously Oregon tomorrow. Then you got the LA schools. Then you got obviously the Pac-12 tournament where we will be hanging out. Where is the what are you looking for in these last couple games? Like, what is the GOAT looking for from his vantage point?
Well, I think for the Wildcats, win all 3 because they win all 3. They're Pac-12 champions, number 1 seed at the Pac-12 tournament, and I think they keep their number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
They lose one of these games, they could potentially lose the regular season championship because they don't own the tiebreaker with Washington State. It would put them in a different bracket in Las Vegas. And it could potentially cost them that 1 seed. I think that, and the reason I say that, Mike, is because of the level of the competition they're playing. If you look at strength of schedule, net ranking, Ken Paul, everything that goes into it, Arizona's playing Oregon, UCLA, and USC. None of those teams are going to move the needle, so to speak. So the only thing that moves the needle right now is probably facing Washington State in the Pac-12 tournament, or maybe Colorado, because they've got some numbers. They have one quad one win this year, and that's going to cost them big time. But so my point being, just go out and win these last 3. Get the championship, be the number 1 seed in Las Vegas. You'd love to win that thing. It's very difficult. 3 games in 3 days is tough. But if you do that, if you win out, I mean, yeah, you're number 1 seed in the West. You're in Salt Lake City on a Thursday, and you're sitting pretty right there. And then you hope for the best.
Is it going to be kind of surreal going to Pauley for the last time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's been
I bet it's been kind of surreal.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, like I said, even though you go to places where there's 3,000 fans that show up, it's just that you've been there for me, you've been there year in, year out. You know the town, you know the arena, you know the people, and you're going to miss them. I'm going to miss the people that, I deal with at all these other schools that I'm not going to see anymore. That's the hard part about it. And Pauley is one of them, and it's one of the great rivalries in college basketball. I think, Mike, I'm hoping that the 2 schools figure out some way of playing.
Right.
And maybe it's every other year. I don't know what it is. I think that, Tommy Lloyd and Mick Cronin have talked about it. The decision's probably going to go beyond just them. But I tell you, and in particular, when you're talking about traveling for non-conference games, you want to limit that, because UCLA in particular, because of their travel situation. So can they come up with something? I don't know. But I would love to see, I would hate to see that rivalry just end forever.
Right.
So I'm hoping that we're back there someday, and they're back in Tucson. But that's probably the only one. If you look at the other 11, well, of course, there's ASU and Colorado and Utah that are going to stay. But playing Washington State again, Oregon State, Cal Stanford, USC, don't see it happening.
I'll tell you one thing, man. I was really excited, though, to see that Tommy Lloyd contract extension in the works. That gave me a nice little sense of security, especially going into the Big 12 next year. Sign me up for Tommy Lloyd for the next 300 years, Brian Jeffries.
Well, like I said, he loves it here. And, I think that's why the school wants to take care of him, which they should, because as we talked about earlier, you have a good coach and you're going to have a good program. And Arizona's been blessed with some great coaches, and they are right now. And so you want to keep him here. He wants to be here. And as long as all of that works together and things are successful, and there's no reason to think that they won't continue, because he's a master recruiter.
Right.
He brings in talent. He teaches extremely well. So, yeah, I don't see anything changing down the road. And people say, I've heard the thing about, when Mark Few retires. And Gonzaga is a great school. Right. Don't get me wrong. One of the best stories in college basketball. But the resources Arizona has are far greater than what Gonzaga has. And so I think as long as things are going well here, why would Tommy ever want to go anywhere else?
I want to move over a little bit of football before we sign off. Brian, Noah Fifita, T-Mac, all those guys, they have a real opportunity here. Well, they already do, but to really have an amazing, amazing legacy here. I mean, let's just talk about Noah Fifita for a second. I mean, the guy's my size, comes in here and doesn't really play, doesn't play as a freshman. Is kind of forced into action, in his redshirt freshman year, absolutely destroys it. National Freshman of the Year. Then his coach leaves. A lot of people think, well, Noah's probably going to go for more money, whatever the case may be. And then T-Mac, and so many others stay without even knowing who the offensive coordinator was going to be at the time. Brian, this is really a story that I think we're living now, but people are going to look back in 20 years and be like, wow. I mean, you just don't see that in college athletics.
Well, it is an exception to I don't want to call it the rule. It's exception to the current trend in college athletics, is that Adia Barnes used, I thought, the best word the other day. I was at a event with her, and she called it transactions.
Right.
That now That's what it's all about, is transactions in college athletics. But when you talk about Tetairoa McMillan, you talk about Noah Fifita, you talk about those guys, if you take a look at their families, then you understand why they stayed, because there's more to life than transactions.
Right.
And they came up, those guys all came from great families. And I think they were brought up well. So give their families all the credit for bringing them up as outstanding young men.
Right.
And so they're not going to just, pull up and pull out and say, okay, that's it. I'm done because my coach left or whatever. They committed to something and they want to see it through. And so, like I said, family and just their own, way of living their lives, I think tells us a lot about them and why they stayed and why they want to continue to exceed.
What are your initial thoughts on Brent Brennan?
Well, I really liked the guy. I tell you, I think it was a perfect fit. It was a great hire. It was, you never know sometimes when these things happen, and no one expected Jeffries to leave. And so it was all of a sudden, okay, what do you do now? And you find a guy that has some background with the program. When you talk about families, again, here's a guy that, has been taught very well in terms of his coaching ability, his coaching resume. You talk to the players that played for him at San Jose State. Right there, I think, is the best indication, is that you don't find anybody that has anything but great things to say about him in terms of the way he treated them and the success he had in a program that, quite frankly, I mean, how he got that done, considering what he had to work with there, all the credit to him. And so I think it was a great hire. He's got a good roster set. I mean, just like every coach in America, you got to go out now and win.
Right.
But I have all the faith in the world that he's going to be a long-term guy that people are going to love watching him, put his teams together.
How weird is it going to be calling a game for Arizona against Central Florida next year in a conference game?
Well, like I said, it's crazy because I spend my summers updating my my book on every team, and of course, I've had 11 teams now for over a decade, and some longer than that, where you kind of have the history on them, and now you've got all these new teams that Arizona's never played before.
Right.
And so now you've got to go back and put the book together on them, even though there's no rivalry, so to speak. I mean, the Wildcats have played some of these schools before, but just learning about their history, what they've done in the past, what they've got going on now. And I love researching that. I love learning more about schools. Like I said, when you face the same 11 year in and year out, you've already got that background. Now it's learning about all these teams. So what is it? So 15 minus 4. So is that 11 new teams?
Yep.
Next year?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's it though, Brian. Come on, just 11 new teams. Come on.
Just 11.
Right.
And of course, Arizona doesn't play all of them right away. I mean, we will down the road, but you look at the different sports. I mean, we're going to play teams in football that we won't see in basketball and vice versa, and then baseball. And I mean, that first year is going to be a whirlwind, I think, for everybody in terms of just learning. And it's going to be for those schools as well, because they're welcoming in. They just added school. Now they're going to add 4 more. And that's college athletics right now.
I don't think that I'm wrong on this, but I think they should keep it called the Big 12, because I believe that they're representative in 12 states, Brian Jeffries.
Hey, that's a great point, Mike. I like your thinking there. And I agree. Why? When was the last time the Big 10 had 10 schools?
No, they have like 35 schools now.
Yeah, let's not mess with it. Okay. Big 12's fine. I like your thinking. That's a perfect reason just to keep it the Big 12. Don't go through all the branding.
Brian, you can steal my point. You can steal my point and give me no credit.
I'd like to give you credit, Mike. I don't.
I don't want any credit. I just want the point put out there. We need to push this point.
I can do that.
All right. Now, also another thing we need to push, the BetMGM Sportsbook app. All right. Now, let's say that you're watching Brian Jeffries and you're like, man, I want to get a little bit of money. Sign up for BetMGM. Use bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app. For at least $5, you will receive $150 instantly in additional winnings, regardless of your wager's outcome. Check out the show notes, and let's hear Damon with the disclaimer.
Problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369-NEW York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms. This promotional offer is not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8.
All right, Brian.
I think I got most of those.
Yeah, you got all of those, Brian. Come on.
Well, wait a minute. Let me see here. There's something about New York. I can't remember.
Right. Yes, there is something about New York. All right, Brian, that jersey behind you, the Jeffries jersey. We actually had somebody ask about that. Did you get this custom made? Was this a player named Jeffries that we do not know about? How did Brian Jeffries get this jersey?
Well, I'll tell you the story that I would like it to refer to, and then I'll tell you the truth.
Okay. Which one first?
The first one is that was my record-setting year when I caught 132 passes.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. You were on the 98 team, right? The 12-1 team?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was it. No, that was actually in commemoration of my 20th year doing the games. And so I actually have one for all three sports. And I don't know, can you see both of them?
Oh, I can see it. Brian, we need to get you a 40-year one. You're coming up on 40
Not yet. The baseball one is in another room because I ran out of wall space here. But it was
cool.
It was a neat night when the university did that for me. So 40. Well, if I make it to 40.
Oh, Brian, you're making it to 40. We're going to be working on your 50th, Brian. You will go nowhere.
No, that's not happening, Mike. That is not happening.
No, Brian. We're going to stay on you about that one. All right.
No.
Real quick before we sign off here, again, OGs, checking out all kinds of good stuff. To learn more about OGs gummies, the fruits, the creams, and where you can find them, head on over to ogsbrands.com. All kinds of good stuff. Again, you will thank me later. All right, Brian, as always, appreciate you. Again, we're going to hang out in Vegas. Anna was going to ask you, maybe you could even hop on our post games every now and then if you get a few minutes.
We did that last year, and I believe did you end up outdoors last year?
We did end up outdoors. Yeah, yes.
That's what I thought. I remembered, if you could please this year provide some climate control to your location outside. So if it's cold,
right.
Maybe some hot chocolate.
Right, or maybe a Del Taco cheeseburger.
Or if it not that soon after the game. I have to hydrate first.
All right. He is the great Brian Jeffries. Give Brody knuckles for me. And again, keep working on him. We want him up there. I've done what I can, Brian.
Hey, I'll do what I can, but I only have so much power. You know how it is.
He's the GOAT, Brian Jeffries, who has now confirmed that he will be on here so we can get one of those 50 jerseys for Brian Jeffries. But for Brian Jeffries, I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.